Kostas Duzínas is a Greek MP for the left-wing Syriza party. He's also chair of the Greek Parliament's National Defence and Foreign Relations Committee. And I'm pleased to say he joins us now. Welcome, Mr. Duzínas.
Yes. Good morning, Henry, from
good morning.
Bright and sunny Athens.
I wish it was bright and sunny here. What's the existential threat that Brexit poses to the EU, if any?
It is not just one existential threat. I think the European Union is going through a perfect storm of crises, multiple crises, starting with the Eurozone crisis, which was particularly important here for Greece and is still going on. Then we had the refugee migration crisis, then Brexit, and then, of course, the rise of extreme right-wing and nationalism.
Well, we should preface everything you say with, well, I've said you're Greek, so that should do the trick, really. But Greece has a few problems with the EU for fairly understandable reasons. You've gone through years of economic misery. Do you see it at the hands of Brussels?
Indeed. There is no doubt that European policy of austerity, of cutting down the social state, of internal devaluation, in other words, cutting salaries and pensions and all the benefits that people used to have, which were not that many. You did mention, I'm a professor in the University of London. I've lived in London since 1974, and I'm now commuting between Athens and London to do my teaching there. And of course, we did have a social state, a welfare state in Britain. We never had a similar thing in Greece, and whatever we had was devastated. And therefore, people are very concerned. We're very concerned about what happened. Greece was saved from bankruptcy, but at the same time, over a short period of time, 5 years, the GDP of the country shrank by 25%.
Absolutely. In the light of all this, Kostas, I'm wondering if you spend a lot of time in London, as you said, do you ever find common ground with the Brexiteers in a mutual distrust of Brussels? Does that work that way?
I would say that I'm still in favor of Europe, but not for the European Union we have now. It needs to be reformed very drastically. There is a huge democratic deficit, huge alienation of people all over the world and all over Europe, and of course in Britain and in Greece. And unless the European Union perhaps uses this crisis, this existential crisis going through to reform, it might not survive. There is this danger, but also there is an opportunity. And for the forces of the left more generally, that were never involved in any major way in the planning and the institutional design and architecture of the European Union, this is a great chance. So I think that the crisis is huge. There is existential problems on both sides, obviously in Britain, but also in Europe, perhaps smaller in Europe. As we saw with Brexit, with the push of Greece and the attempt to push it outside the European Union, as we know from anthropology, occasionally communities that are riven with dissent, with disputes, with tensions, use a sacrificial lamb, turn out or sacrifice a member, and then they get reunited. And this happened over Greece, and this is happening over Brexit also now with the European Union.
So sling Britain out and be happier. Dio Foster, if I gave you the opportunity to speak up for Brussels and for the EU generally, would you take it now?
I would, because I actually think it's a huge peace project, this thing that Say was saying before, and it actually paves the way for other places in the world to figure out how to cooperate, because that is much better than going and fighting, slugging it out.
Good defense, Kostas? Yes, in theory. Of course, the whole European Union project, when it started as the EEC, as we knew it at the time when Britain joined, was based on two great principles: prosperity based on solidarity, and secondly, peace in our time, to stop those great tensions and wars that devastated Europe, over the 20th century. Both of these great projects, I think, are in retreat at the minute. I was telling you what happened to the Greek people, but similarly, the similar things happened to the Spaniards, the Italians, the Irish, the Portuguese. So the idea of prosperity in a sense, was undercut when the solidarity of the richer nations basically disappeared. And then on the second great principle, again, a wonderful achievement of the European Union to turn wars and military conflict into economic competition. But then look at what happened over the refugee crisis. Suddenly nationalism has come back. Nationalism, xenophobia, attacks on refugees, on those other particularly vulnerable groups of people. And then this turned into internal attacks between Italy and Germany, between Greece and Hungary. So while the principle is great and remains, as your panelist said, one of the great achievements of civilization, of Western civilization, at this moment, I think both these principles are under attack, and that endangers the very survival of the Union.
Kostas Duzínas, Greek MP and academic from Syriza Party in Athens. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. I've learned a few things, new perspectives on Brexit. I hope you have. You're with the BBC World Service. I'm Paul Henley. This is Weekend.